Okay. Our second speaker today, Dr. Arun Kumar, on the topic ab initio, study of CRS2 and CRSE2 dimensionality dependent properties. I would like to introduce Dr. Arun Kumar, sir. Dr. Arun Kumar, Assistant Professor Physics, Swami Vivekanand Government College, Gumarbi, Bilaspur, Himachal Pradesh. Dr. Arun Kumar is PhD from Himachal Pradesh University in 2014. His research expertise in area of computational condensed matter physics. Sir, already interact with him during last two sessions. So I would like to invite Dr. Arun Kumar, sir. Arun Kumar, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for inviting me and introducing me. So there is a little bit problem in my network. So in 1 to 2 minutes, I will start my talk. Just a minute.
Sir, please share PPTs.
Yeah, I am just sharing. So I thank Professor Mohanlal Verma for inviting me for this talk. And Keshav. So my screen and my voice is clear to all of you.
Yes, sir.
So now I'm starting. So here my topic of the talk is the ab initio study of chromium disulfide and chromium diselenide nanostructures. And here basically I am talking about the dimensionality dependent property. That's how dimensional with the change in the dimensionality properties of the materials will change. So here these are the transition metals, what which I am talking. These are the transition metals, and these are the chalcogen. This series: oxygen, sulfur, selenium, and tellurium. So the metal which I have taken, it is the chromium for this, and for X I have taken sulfur and selenium, and here I have taken chromium. And the question arises that why I am taking TMD, transition metal dichalcogenide. So if I try to look at various properties of two-dimensional TMD, so TMDs are of various types. So if I look at two-dimensional transition metal dichalcogenide, so these shows semiconducting properties. These will show semi-metal like properties, and these will also show metal-like properties and the superconductor. They can also be used to fabricate the superconductor. And these all are experimental references. These all are experimentally done studies. So here, for semiconductor, they are used as a direct band gap material or indirect band gap material. So these are certain examples which I have quoted here: molybdenum sulfide or molybdenum selenide monolayers, and they are found to be direct band gap semiconductor. And direct band gap semiconductor materials will help in optoelectronics or photonics. And indirect band gap materials, 8 monolayer MOSE2 is reported as a indirect band gap material, and these are the tungsten ditelluride and TiSC2. These are found to be silver metals, simply monolayer. But niobium sulfide and vanadium selenide, they are found to be metals, and these are the some examples of the superconductor. So that means these two-dimensional materials will show every type of property, because this is basically a broad classification of solids on the basis of their conductivity, and they will show application in every field. Now, I'm going to talk about that why I'm taking, because I'm talking about the derivatives. Derivatives means dimensionality dependent property. So I'm not restricting myself to the two-dimensional materials, but I'm shifting towards the zero-dimensional materials, and I'm talking about the one-dimensional materials also. So there are derivatives of, so there are various derivatives of these what we call 2D PMD. One is the zero-dimensional nanostructures, another is the one-dimensional nanostructures. So among zero-dimensional nanostructures, COSE2 or MOSE2, they mean among zero-dimensional. This is the example of nanoparticles formed by this PMD. And a quantum dot MOS2 and WS2, they will show quantum dot like characteristics. And then nanoflakes of WS2 and MOSE2, they will show properties of nanoflakes. And these all are zero-dimensional derivatives. They will show application in LEDs or the solar cell, even single electron transistor or in the laser. Then another derivative of two-dimensional material is the one-dimensional nanostructures. And one-dimensional nanostructures are nothing but they may be nanotubes, they may be nanowires, they may be nanobelts, or nanorods, or nanoribbons. And these are the various examples of these materials. Right? And why I am talking about derivatives? Because when we cut a 2D sheet, either I will get a zero-dimensional system or a one-dimensional system. That's why I am talking here the derivative of two-dimensional transition metal dielectric mass. The derivative. And why I am using chromium? That's a very, very important question. Because it was reported that tetragonal phase of CRS2 and distorted tetragonal phase. P represents tetragonal, and this P prime represents distorted tetragonal. No, sorry, no, not tetragonal, but octahedral phase. I have mentioned here. So it is not tetragonal, but it is a octahedral phase. So this will show basically magnetic character. So here, for octahedral phase of CRS2, per chromium atom, it will show a magnetic moment of 0.591 for magnetron, whereas distorted phase will show 2.206 UV. So these are basically thin sheets, monotomically thin sheets. So corresponding to those sheets, we will get the magnetism. So magnetic properties directly or indirectly is related to the chromium atom. And if the structure is distorted, that distortion in the structure that is also responsible for the magnetic properties. And another, this is also experimental study, and experimentally it is found that CRI3, CR2GE2, PE6, or CR2S3, CRSC, or CROX, where X is the chlorine and the bromine, they are found to be helpful in the field of spintronics. So that's why I used chromium here. And then 2D layered flakes of CrS2 and MoS2, they are synthesized experimentally. They are cut from the two-dimensional layer. And then ultra thin WS2 nanosheets show ferromagnetism at room temperature. So that means TMB, they will show in direct or indirect manner somewhere magnetic characteristics. And ferromagnetism in these nanosheets is due to the presence of zigzag edges. I will talk about these edges later on. And similarly, MoSe2 nanoflakes are reported their ferromagnetic nature. So this is the brief overview. Now, I briefly talk about the theoretical formulation which I adopted. So basically, the ultimate aim of a physicist is to solve a Schrodinger wave equation, and Schrodinger wave equation is a very simple equation that Xi is equal to E psi, as Dr. Ashok talk about this in a very briefly. So we want to solve this equation, and here this is the Hamiltonian, many electron Hamiltonian. This is the kinetic energy of nuclei, electron kinetic energy. This is nuclear interaction, and this is electron interaction, and it is the electron nuclear interaction, as I showed here also. So first of all, we will use the Born-Oppenheimer approximation, because the motion of the electron is, because electrons are moving very fast, but nuclei is almost fixed in comparison to motion of the electron. So that means we will freeze the nuclei and we will solve the only, or we will worry about only the electronic Hamiltonian. So for electronic part, we will solve the Schrodinger wave equation, and for that we will use Hartree approximation. Right? We will use Hartree approximation, or then Hartree approximation is nothing but we will simply write down wave function, many electron wave function, as the product of the phase ion 3 particle. Then I can write down wave function as a psi 1 into psi 2 into psi 3 in this manner. But it do not take care of the anti-symmetry. Then Hartree-Fock approximation was there, where this was written in the form of a letter determinant. But there are certain difficulties that how to deal with the 3n variable problem, because then we have to deal with the large number of variables or the large number of particles, because this is a dimensionality dependent property. So it's very difficult to deal with the 3n variables. And another problem is the correlation energy. So this problem is sorted out with the help of a new theory that is known as density functional theory. It's a new approach. And here what we did, we will replace the many particle wave function, which depends upon 3n variables, that is replaced with the electron density having 3 variables. So that means 3n variable have been reduced into the electron density. That's what people did in the density functional theory. And this is the first Ornberg theorem and the second Ornberg-Cohen theorem. It was suggested by Ornberg and Cohen in 1964. So there is a one-to-one mapping between ground state electron density and ground state wave function of many particle systems. And another theorem states that density minimizes the total electron energy of the system, right? And then practically to implement this, Cohen and Sham reformulated the things in 1965, and they suggested that ground state charge density is given as a sum over one electron orbital, and we call these as Cohen-Sham orbitals. And reformulate the Schrodinger equation of interacting electron moving in an external ion potential into a problem of non-interacting electrons moving in an effective potential. That's what is suggested by Cohen and Sham. So this is Cohen-Sham equation. I briefly talk about these terms. I'm not going into the detail of this. So according to him, there are certain terms, right? So first is the kinetic energy term, and second part contains exchange and correlation. So this is the kinetic energy of the system. This is the Hartree potential, and this is the Coulombic potential. This is the Coulombic potential. I'm not talking about this. And then let me briefly explain these properties. So first term is the kinetic energy, and kinetic energy can be calculated in this manner. This is a mathematical formulation. And Hartree basically it describes the interaction between the electrons in the system and is approximated by Coulomb potential arising from the system of the fixed nuclei. Interaction between electrons. That's how electrons are interacting with each other. And it is a Coulombic potential like that, right? And another is, so that means it is a kinetic energy of electron. Its term seems like TE, kinetic energy of the system. And this is basically electron-electron interaction term. But there is another Coulomb potential, which we are defining in the earlier slide. So interaction of electron with different nuclei. That's how electron is interacting with the different nuclei. And here what we are doing, we are using in our calculation Fiesta code. So Fiesta code, which this term is taken care with the help of the pseudopotential. And what we are doing in the pseudopotential, that valence electrons are sitting under the effective influence of core plus nuclei, right? So basically, this was taken care with the help of a pseudopotential in our code. And in full potential code, things are different. So then these are various approximations used in LDA and the GVA. These are used, and even sometimes people will use other hybrid functional also, or the meta GVA. Hybrid means mixing of LDA and GVA, and these hybrid functionals are useful for the semiconductor. LDA is good for metal, like sodium, but GGA is good for metals as well as semiconductors also. But there is a problem with this GGA, that it will underestimate your band gap, almost half sometimes. If band gap is say 0.7, so it may report 0.3 to 0.5. So it is underestimated. But if you do calculation with the hybrid functional, if it is available with your code, then that will be better. So for semiconductor, people will use hybrid functional. But it's not necessary that if hybrid functional is not there, you should go for this. Then need not to worry, because it is basically we are doing simulation. So that means we are just taking idea of the system. And there is another meta GGA. So del NR is used in GGA, NR is used in LDA, NR comma, it is used in GGA, but in meta GGA, people will use in meta GGA, if I talk about meta GGA, then it will use NR, del NR, or del square NR, higher order derivatives of this gradient. These are used in meta GGA. And this is a brief algorithm for the solution of the Cohen-Cham equation. And practically, to do all these things, there are various computational codes are available. So there are various forms of classification. So one is the how atomic electrons are treated. So if we are using full potential, then Fp, Wien 2K or L codes are available. If we will use pseudo potential, then we will use codes like CASF or C star. And there is another approximation, atomic sphere approximation. For that, people will use this code. And there is another classification depending upon how basis set is used to expand the wave function. So if we are using plane wave, then quantum espresso, A-Binit fast or the CASF codes are available. And if we will use augmented plane wave approach, then L, Wien 2K or exciting code is available. And if we will use localized atomic orbitals as basis set, then people will use CST and the E. And this atomic orbitals make CST much more important. And here pseudo potential this CST code. So this makes it faster. Now let us have a look at the systems which I have taken. So first of all, I have taken a 2D sheet, two-dimensional nanosheet. It is a monoatomically thin. This is a 2D sheet, and if I cut it along this axis, or if I cut it along this axis, then I will get a different ribbon, different one-dimensional system. So if I cut this sheet along this direction, then I am getting a zigzag. This is a zigzag. Yes, this is zigzag. This is zigzag like characteristic. Yes, this is zigzag sheet, right? And if I cut it along this direction, along x direction, means it is a periodic, its periodicity along y-axis and its periodicity if it is along x-axis, then I am getting a armchair-like structure. See, this is armchair, this like a chair. So it is repeating in this manner. So I have taken a armchair. So these are the, this is a zigzag structure and this is a armchair structure. And this is its unit cell which I have taken. And repeating it, I will get a one-dimensional nano ribbons of different dimensionalities. And this will suggest its the width of the ribbon. And another thing which I have taken, it's a zero-dimensional system. So I have taken flakes. I cut the sheet again. Then I cut sheet in the different designs. And I'm getting a zero-dimensional system. So these are the input structure and this is the output optimized structure. So see, in comparison to this structure is little bit distorted. It moves away from here towards this side, right? And this way. Right. So these are basically edge effects. Edges, these things will happen. So after optimizing, I have calculated the lattice constant, bond length of various systems. So if I see this table, so this is the lattice constant. And this is the other, I compared it with another paper. So It is the lattice constant of monolayer and it is found to be non-magnetic. I also do calculations for this nano ribbon. This is the armchair nano ribbon and this is the zigzag nano ribbon. If I try to look at this armchair and the zigzag, both are found to be magnetic in nature. Whereas this is antiferromagnetic and this is both are found to be antiferromagnetic. And its lattice constant is this one. And its lattice constant is this one. And if I look at its bond length, so it is the bond length of the monolayer and this bond length, and I go back. When I go back, see this, there are two different regions. This is the left side of the ribbon, this is the right side of the ribbon, and this is the central region. This is the central region of the ribbon. So what is happening at these edges? Chromium atom is sitting here, and here the chromium atom is sitting outer side. Here it is little bit inner side. But whereas if I look at the armchair, it is symmetrical at both left and the right edges, and I have seen its impact on this. See, in case of armchair, the bond length is left and the right edges is equal because I have taken average bond length, but in the central region, it is different. And similarly, but if I go back to this zigzag ribbon, so in zigzag ribbon at left edge and the right edge, so bond length is different. At left edge, bond length is larger as compared to right edge. There is a reason for it. And in central region, it is almost similar to bond length of the monolayer in the central region. Then I will talk about these bond length of these plates later on. I will discuss. And similar trend I have obtained for this. See the reason for it. The reason for it is this. If I try to look at this region, this is the left region and this is the right side of the zigzag. So here, chromium atom is surrounded by
Hello, Arun sir. Sir, your voice is not audible. Dr. Arun sir, are you hearing me? Mr. Naren Kumar? Dr. Arun sir?
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are audible now.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And my screen is visible.
Pardon, sir?
My screen is also visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Yes, sir. Your screen is also visible, sir. Everything all right, sir. You can start. Or you can continue your
Okay.
lecture, sir.
Starting again. And I also did certain calculations for this ferromagnetic and anti-ferromagnetic by varying the lattice constant. So this one is for armchair structure and this is for zigzag structure. And see, for this armchair is found to be anti-ferromagnetic because here the energy is minimum in this case. And similarly for this, but if I try to look at another case of this here SE2, right? So here it is found to be what we call this is ferromagnetic in nature. So this is a way that how we look at the magnetic behavior, whether it is ferromagnetic or anti-ferromagnetic. But here is a very strange thing is happening. Both the energies are similar. Ferromagnetic and anti-ferromagnetic states are equally big, right? Both are having the same energy. So here for this I have studied simply ferromagnetic fraction or the ferromagnetic field. So both armchair and the zigzag nanoribbon of CRS2 are anti-ferromagnetic in nature, whereas zigzag nanoribbon of CRSE2 is ferromagnetic in nature. And CRSE2 nanoribbon armchair is this. But if I go now, I am going back to these plates also or the zero-dimensional system. Here I am talking about coordination number 4 and the coordination number 6. Here I am also talking about coordination number 4 and the 6. And all are found to be ferromagnetic in nature. All are found to be ferromagnetic in nature, or I studied the ferromagnetic. So, see, if I look at this chromium atom, just magnifying it, see, if I look at this chromium atom, so this chromium atom is surrounded by 4 sulfur atoms. So its coordination number is 4. But if I try to look at this, it is surrounded by 6 atoms. So that means its coordination number will be different. So for different coordination number, I am getting different bond length. So these are the bond lengths. And they also follow the same trend. So the coordination number will be larger and the larger will be the bond. That's what I mentioned here. So larger the coordination number, larger will be this. And this is the trend which we are getting out of it. So as dimensionality increases, as dimensionality decreases, bond length is also. So in case of 2D, bond length is smaller and then it increases for 1D and then it's again larger for the 0D. So the trend we are getting. Then the cohesive energy of the system. This is the formula which we have used. This is the total energy of the nanostructure. And these are the isolated constituents energy, and it is multiplied by that how many number of atoms we are taking. And it's the cohesive energy per atom we have taken. And similarly, we got the magnetic moment. So monolayer is found to be non-magnetic in nature. And this is the magnetic moment. 0.190, 0.267. Here, for smaller plates, this is very large. Magnetic moment is very large. And larger plates are more stable. Larger plates are found to be more stable. because their energy keep on increasing. See the trend. So here cohesive energy decreases with decrease in dimensionality, and among armchair and zigzag nanoribbon is more stable. It's found to be more stable. And cohesive energy of flakes increases with increase in the flake size for both. Whether I am talking about sulfide flakes or the selenide flakes, and the trend which we are getting for the moment, magnetic moment. So magnetic moment is nothing but it is the Mulliken charge for population for up minus downspin. If I take the difference of that, then we can calculate the magnetic moment. Or if I take total density of states, and if I take the difference of up and the down density of states, that is another way to look at the magnetic moment also. So there are two different approaches which we will adopt to calculate the magnetic moment. And magnetic moment increases with decrease in the dimensionality, and the magnetic moment of nanoflakes increases with increase in flake size. So same trend which we are getting. And what is contributing? If I have not mentioned here charge density, but if I look at the charge density plots of these, then these edge atoms, the atoms which are lying at the edges, they are contributing for magnetic moment more, whereas inner atoms are contributing less for the magnetic moment, or they show almost negligible contribution for the magnetic point. Similar things which we are getting here. And another interesting thing which we are seeing here, that these zigzag in armchair and zigzag ribbons are found to be more magnetic in nature as compared to armchair, because of the different atomic arrangement in both the edges, left or the right edge. This is the main, and people have reported experimentally that edge effects are responsible for magnetic moment, these systems. So which we have observed theoretically also. And these are the electronic properties of first of all I talk about KRS2 monolayer and its derivatives. So and this is the monolayer. So monolayer is basically a direct band gap semiconductor. This is for upspin, this is for downspin, and this is for upspin. Spin resolved band structure I have plotted. So both up and down band structure for monolayer identical, and similar trend for up and the downspin for the this projected density of states or the total density of states is observable, right? So this shows its non-magnetic character of the monolayer. But if I see this armchair nanoribbon, so this is for the downspin, this is for the upspin. So downspin is found to be direct band gap material, whereas upspin, this is for upspin is found to be direct band gap semiconductor, and downspin is found to be indirect band gap semiconductor. So here the band gap is larger. Here the band gap is larger. Its band gap is indirect for the downspin. So its band gap is somewhere from here to here, but here its band gap is from here to here. But if I look at zigzag material, if zigzag ribbon, so what is there in case of zigzag? It's a downspin, but a large band gap is there, right? 0.626, and it's the indirect band gap. It is from somewhere here to here, but it is metallic. because bands are crossing. It is found to be metallic in nature, and these signatures are also visible from the density of state plot. And here chromium is the red, and chromium is contributing more for the density of state. See, but S is contributing less. But if I go to the nanoflakes, and here two bands are crossing for this case, there two bands are crossing. So one here and another here. So its conductance will be 2G naught. It's a quantum conductance, 2G naught conductance is contributing for this. And rest of the systems are semiconductors. And these are the various flakes, CR7, S12, CR12. I think these are not visible to us. Let me enlarge it. Yeah. See the flakes. So they will show discrete bands. These are the basically discrete bands. They're not curved. So that means these discrete bands, they will show that all these systems are zero-dimensional systems. Whether we will take atom or molecule or zero-dimensional system, and it may be nanoflake, it may be quantum dots, we will always see discrete bands. So this is the band structure. This is the spin resolve. This is for upspin and this is for the downspin. It's upspin and it's a downspin. And for upspin, this HOMO-LUMO gap for flakes for zero-dimensional system, we will talk about HOMO-LUMO gap. So here HOMO-LUMO gap will be different. And here, this is like semi-metal, because almost zero band gap. So this flake will show semi-metal like factor. But if I see this structure, so this zigzag, this is semiconducting and it is metallic, it is conducting. So a material which is semiconducting for one spin and conducting for another spin, or metallic for another spin, that is known as Husserl alloy. So that means it will show Husserl alloy like characteristics. Here I have quoted. And these are the results for similar results I have obtained for this CRS2 also. But here zigzag is found to be metallic. Rest of the properties are similar. So this is metallic in nature. This is metallic for both up and down. But here it is a semiconducting CRSC2. And these are the properties. So it is a direct band gap material. And here for upspin and downspin, its density, its conductance will be different. For upspin, it is a 1G naught, and whereas it is 2G naught for it. And these all are found to be, for up and the downspin, they are found to be, for these nanoflakes are found to be semiconducting in nature. And this is the HOMO-LUMO gap. So spin dependent HOMO-LUMO gap is there. So different properties for spin dependent. So they will show application in spintronics. So I think I talk about all these things. So this flake is found to be semi-metal. So up to this, what I have found that these all the systems, few of them are found to be semiconducting with direct band gap materials, and few of them are found to be indirect band gap materials. And out of these, one found to be show Husserl alloy like characteristics, and another show spin dependent different conductance for up and the down spin for CRSC2 nanoribbon, and all the nanoflakes are semiconducting in nature, but Cr12S20, this nanoflake shows semi-metal like characteristics for up and the downspin. For upspin, for upspin, but for downspin it is semiconducting in nature. Semi-metal means almost zero band gap. Then once we got the band structure of the material, using that band structure, we can calculate dielectric function also. So this is the dielectric function, this is the real part of the dielectric function, and this is the imaginary part of the dielectric function. And we can use band structure for dielectric properties. So this is the formula which people will use in this in the Siesta course for calculating the imaginary part of dielectric function. So we will calculate from band structure imaginary part of dielectric function using this formula, and Fi and Fn are the Fermi functions for the initial and the final state. With energies Ei and En, is the momentum operator. And once we got the imaginary part of dielectric function, we can calculate the real part of dielectric function using Kramer-Kronig transformation. This is the formula. And once we got epsilon 1 and epsilon 2, we can calculate the refractive index, extinction coefficient, and these two are used to calculate reflectance and absorption coefficient. So this is a way that how we can calculate reflectance and absorption coefficients also. So I have shown here only the imaginary part of dielectric function, and I have mentioned here only, I have not shown a reflectance spectra or the absorption spectra, but I have shown here imaginary part of dielectric function and band structure and corresponding favorable transition. So if we look at here, for CRS2 monolayer, energy band gap is 0.70, and this corresponds to this transition because here it suddenly rises, starts rising. It suddenly starts rising because it corresponds to, because imaginary part corresponds to loss or absorption, right? So this is a K to K prime transition, and this is a band gap. It is a K to K prime transition from here to here. Let me magnify it. See. So it is a K to K prime transition. This is K to K prime transition, and corresponding to this, I am getting this point. This is the band gap. Then this is another transition, delta to delta prime. So these are, I have shown here few transitions near the energy band gap, and corresponding to these transitions, I am getting a certain peaks in the, this is one peak, this is another peak, this is another peak in the imaginary part of dielectric function. And whereas if I go to this another, it's a indirect band gap semiconductor, right? It's a zigzag nano ribbon. With the downspin, it is an indirect band gap semiconductor, and its indirect band gap is from here to here. This delta to gamma, right? And corresponding to this delta to gamma, there is a sudden rise. So it is an indirect band gap material. And here Then it is gamma 1 to gamma 1 prime. There is a transition. It is here, this one. And corresponding to this transition, if I see its absorption spectra, so the absorption spectra will show sudden fall. So this edge is known as alpha edge. I am not going to talk about it here. So it is a alpha edge, means sudden fall in the absorption. So alpha edge I have seen corresponding to next nearest K point. So corresponding to this, it's the nearest neighbor K point at the same value. So that means for direct band gap, see the difference, for direct band gap, this is the, alpha edge corresponds to this point. See, both are identical, alpha edge and this, but for indirect band gap semiconductor, alpha edge is next nearest K point. So it is the next nearest K point other than band gap. So it is not at the band gap. That's what we are observing here for the indirect band gap semiconductor. So that means for indirect band gap semiconductor, alpha edge is basically at the slightly higher value rather than band gap. So similar trend we are getting everywhere in this case. Here also. See, energy band gap is a direct band gap semiconductor, so alpha edge is the same point. And here it is also similar. It's a direct band gap, so it is also similar for CRSE2 and similarly for CRS1. It's a direct, so if it is indirect band gap, say it is 0.688 and alpha edge is at 0.770. It is next nearest transition. It corresponds to this one. So once we got imaginary part of dielectric function using these formulas, we can calculate real part of dielectric function, and then you can calculate the refractive index or the extinction coefficient or the reflectance or the absorption coefficient. These so many properties can be calculated, but my focus in this talk is that I want to show you that how these transitions, this is simply estimation, that how these transitions and the peaks in the imaginary part of dielectric function are relating to one another. That's the motivation of my talk in the optical properties. I think in tomorrow's lab session, Dr. Verma will talk about optical properties and magnetic properties. So my motivation is that how we look at the results which we are getting out of it. So I talk about these conclusions here also in detail. So I thank CSTA team for providing the course. Anjana Devi, my PhD student, Narendra Kumar, my student, and another student, Tanush Kumar. Because Tanush helped me to do these zero-dimensional systems, and Anjana, then Narendra helped me to work on the ribbon. He worked a lot on the ribbon. So now I thank. So any questions?
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, question in chat box.
Okay, what's the question?
Yes. Some question in chat box, sir.
Okay, in the chat box. Let me open the chat box.
Kulvinder Singh,
Just looking at the chat box.
Visakha Singh,
One by one, I will take the question. So one question is this one, that Fiesta totally underestimate the band gap even for the simple hybrid 2D silicon carbide with GGA PVE. Any solution overcome this? Reported that they are using a hybrid function, but yes, it is not common for all. They have not made it common. But on Melee Archive, I am seeing on that they will, in the later versions, they will available hybrid functional in Fiesta soon. Then we will overcome this difficulty. But up to this, there is a problem with Fiesta that low hybrid functional is not there. So we are always underestimating the band gap. But we are very much sure whether the system is metallic or semiconductor. Up to this level, there is no problem because we are just estimating the material. What should be its properties if it is of this dimension? Then underestimation when during calculation for semiconductor. Even Fiesta has another option. You can use hybrid functional also at your own manually. Say you can use 0.25%, 25% of LDA or 75% of this GGA. There is a flat hybrid functional block. You can use that also. You can see the effect of that. But if you are having optimized hybrid functional, that will be much better. So I think I try to answer this question. Are you satisfied? Okay. Okay. Vishaka Singh asked the question that how we get to know that the material is magnetic or non-magnetic in nature. It's basically if you run calculation for, say, let me tell you. Say I am doing a lattice constant, say for iron, right? One calculation, I switch off the spin polarized off, and I got a lattice constant in this manner, right? This is the non-magnetic case. And if you do calculation for, say, magnetic one, so for magnetic one, if you got structure like this, that means it is for the magnetic case. You run a calculation magnetic and you run a calculation non-magnetic. Out of these two, which has the lower energy, that is the nature of the system. So that means it is a magnetic nature. So it will show it is magnetic. And there is another flag for if you are doing ferromagnetic or anti-ferromagnetic calculation. If you switch on these flags, or if you do calculation for ferromagnetic and anti-ferromagnetic, and you got minima for something, then you are sure that your system is ferromagnetic or anti-ferromagnetic system. I told you in this slide also. See, so here it is ferromagnetic in nature because its energy will be minimum and it is ferromagnetic. So out of these, which has minima? Minima is this one. So that means my system is existing in anti-ferromagnetic state. But here it is existing in the ferromagnetic state. This is a way that how you are sure that type of the system. So I think I answered this question.
Okay, any question?
Let me see if there is another band gap. People are talking about particular application for the either spin up and the spin down band gap. You have to manually see this. In the bands file, you have to manually identify which band is up or the which band is down. I'm not comparing cohesive energy and the magnetic. I'm just looking cohesive energy separately. I'm looking at the magnetic moment separately. Right? So is there any more question?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.